I'm Kirk. I was just on Kim's show. What a wonderful host she is. I had a blast being there. I hope you'll have an opportunity to listen to our comments and our discussion. I think it'll be beneficial for you.
Welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're here. You are going to be so happy that you are here. I am Kim Sorrelle. I'm a speaker, I'm an author. I get to do a lot of fun things in life. My favorite thing to do is meet people, and I get to meet some of the world's coolest people. And today I get to talk to Kirk, and you will love him. He has a great story, but the one thing that I love about Kirk is that he's such a family guy and he wrote a book really for his family. Like who does that? And so I just think it's really great. You're gonna love him. You're gonna love the stories and everything that we talk about today. So let's get going. Kirk, welcome to the show.
Kim, it's great to be with you. It's great to be anywhere.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? Yeah, so okay, so before we get into your book and all the stuff that you're doing and everything about it, I'd like people to get to know you. So I would like you to tell me about 8-year-old Kirk.
8-year-old Kirk, this is in the book, it's the first chapter, was a Cub Scout, and he was going door to door trying to sell Thin Mints to raise funds for the Cub Scouts. And it was about the 31st house, but who's counting, that I came to, that I had my 31st rejection. No, son, we don't want any Thin Mints. And with that, my whole box split open on the curb, and I sat down in my Cub Scout uniform and I just started crying on the curbs of the area we lived in, Fort Worth, Texas. Ran home to my mom and said, I don't want to be in sales. So that's what I remember from being 8 years old. And guess what? I'm in sales. I'm maybe not selling a product, but I'm selling an idea, a concept myself to that degree. But that is my memory of being 8 years old, awkward, clumsy, and crying on a curb.
You poor kid. Why did everybody say no to you? How can they say no to that face and that 8-year-old little guy going in his Cub Scout uniform? That's so sad. I remember those days. I was a brownie and then a Girl Scout.
Ah,
And so, yeah, selling the cookies door to door. And yeah, that was fun. And there was no Venmo or anything then. So you had to go back and collect cash from everybody. So yeah, maybe you were better off because you didn't sell any. You didn't have to go back and deliver. You didn't have to go back and get the cash. It all worked out okay.
the good news in our neighborhood, the houses were pretty close together. So they weren't on acreage or anything like that. They were actually on lots. So it was a short stroll house to house. And sometimes
Nice.
a neighbor would be out watering the grass. You could kill two birds with one stone, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's nice. That yeah, much nicer that way. Then yes. So then you got through high school and did you know when you were young, did you know what you wanted to do when you grew up? What you wanted to do for school or what you wanted to do for life in general?
Well, it's 60 years past 8 years old now for me, Kim, and I continue on a journey. And to some degree, I still wonder what I'm going to do when I grow up. But
I'm with you. I'm with you.
having said that, after the rejection of Thin Mints, a couple of years later, I got involved in sports. And it's sometimes these somewhat insignificant figures, you would say. They aren't your best friends, but they come into your life and they introduce you to something. And in my case, it was introducing me to basketball, which I really took to. And I was fairly tall for my age then and started participating. But Kim, what I really enjoyed just as much as playing was the mathematical component of it, averages and percentages and likelihoods. And little did I know that when I was 10, 11 years old, pre-calculator that I would do my own long division in my head and memorize it, and that would eventually lead to a part-time vocation. So I didn't really dream of it. I wanted to play in the NBA. That wasn't going to happen. But now I get to go to these games, see them, have a front row seat, so to speak, and I don't have to get sweaty. Sometimes I
Yeah.
get dirty at a basketball game when they run to the table and they knock my drink over, but that's part of being part of the action.
Right, right, right. Well, and there was no ESPN back when you were in school because that's back when I was in school. So I know there wasn't an ESPN. And so, yeah, hard to imagine things that didn't actually exist at the time. And so, yeah, yeah. And so now you've had this great career doing things that you love, it sounds like.
I am getting ready to enter my 37th season of doing this, and I told my wife this just the other day. I get more excited every year. And it's the opportunity to do what I do best, but also the access and connection to the sports world, the inside stories that go with that. And I was sharing with somebody else with the crew I work with primarily. It's like stepping into an episode of Seinfeld every week. Random thoughts all over the place, and somehow that all weaves together in being a product that we invite people to come in and watch and listen to with us.
Yeah, well, that's what I love about it, though, is it's not just reporting sports. It's not just saying who made the basket and what was going on, but it is the stories and telling the stories and hearing the backgrounds and interjecting the fun that makes it so much more enjoyable. So I love that.
The heroes, the villains, the faux pas, it's all there. And I get to be a part of that. What could be
Yeah.
better?
No kidding. No kidding. How fun is that? And you live in Florida. So you were in Texas. Your son's in Indiana. You're in Florida. But in Texas is warm. Florida's warm. I'm in Michigan. I get winter. I want to go to Florida in the winter so that I don't have all the snow. But have you ever lived in an area with snow?
We had a job opportunity. We were living in West Texas at the time, which is when God created the earth, and no offense to people in West Texas, I'm convinced he ran out of building material when he came to West Texas. So where we lived out in the Permian Basin, the only thing that grows tends to hurt you. And my wife is very visual. She's an interior designer. So a job opportunity came up in St. Louis. And her comment when I asked her about it, that sounds pretty. Well, we not only moved there, but we lived there for 16 years and got to enjoy the four seasons, basically raised our two kids there. And it was a wonderful experience. And I miss living in St. Louis, going to Cardinal games and coming back into town from the east side where you always knew where you were because there was this big 648-foot arch that welcomed you
No
back.
kidding. No kidding. And so if it's on your right, this is where you are. If it's on your left, if it's in front of you, yeah, that's kind of nice to have that there for direction for sure.
Yeah,
So you could really live anywhere, probably, right?
I
For
could live
your for
anywhere
what you do. Yeah.
and yeah, I just have to have access to an airport and I don't have big airports here, but I've got two. One's 37 miles away, the other is 33 miles away. So we can get anywhere and we spend a lot of time going through Atlanta and Dallas and Charlotte, usually on the way to someplace else.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. Yeah. It's nice if you live in a place that has direct flights, but I live in a place that has very few direct flights. Everything you have to it's a two flight to get to most anywhere from Grand Rapids, Michigan. But
So you're Detroit and Chicago often, I guess.
well, Chicago, Dallas,
Hmm.
Charlotte, yeah. So Atlanta, yes, wherever it happens to drive me. So I want to hear some stories. I'm sure you've got the most fun, incredible, great stories. And so I'd love to hear a couple.
Well, where to start? Let me start kind of from the beginning of my first season in working in college football. And TV was not nearly as sophisticated then as it is now. We didn't have the revelation of Janet Jackson's breast quite yet. So there was not the delay that we now get when you're viewing at home of 3 to 5 seconds so that adjustments can be made if something comes onto the screen, which is not family rated. So this was in 1989. We're doing a game in Lubbock, Texas at Texas Tech, and we're fading to a commercial. And with the company I was working with at the time, Raycom, this was pre-ESPN days. We were doing Southwest Conference telecast. We faded to commercial. And so in my headset, I could hear the 10, 9, 8. The crowd shot was one of maybe a 3-year-old girl sitting in her dad's lap. Really cute. At 7, the 3-year-old girl started going to the nose with the finger. 6, 5, 4. She dug. She got her treasure, and we could hear in the background, oh, crap, 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 crap. We still have a count of 4 more to go.
Oh,
She wasn't satisfied to just leave it on the finger. 3, 2, 1, into the mouth.
oh no. Oh, geez.
We go to
Oh,
commercial. And coming back from commercial, our color analyst, I still remember it well. How do you segue off of that? His segue was, well, welcome back to our game of the week on Saturday. Raycom sure knows how to pick them.
yeah, that's a good way to come back. I'm sure
Yeah,
those watching were laughing. If I were the parent of that child, I would be a little devastated, perhaps, but something that will live in infamy, I guess, is that grand nose picking at the game. That's so funny. That is so funny. Yeah, I guess you don't know what you're gonna get. There's
you
gonna be
don't know what you're going to
surprises.
get. And
Yeah.
you've got to be improvisational to a large degree. How are you going to adjust to the unexpected, the unpredictable? And oftentimes, in the broadcast crew, we're called to do that. The stories of the connections that you make. This was at the Orange Bowl in about 2000, and we had a visitor into the booth. He was a quarterback for the New York Jets in Super Bowl III, number 12. He guaranteed a win over the Baltimore Colts, who were favored by 18 points. So to meet Joe Willie Namath was a childhood dream. What I recall about him, Kim, is those penetrating blue eyes that looked so good when he was doing the pantyhose commercials. But not only that, the size of his hands. He's not that tall. I'm 6'2". I'm taller than he is, but his hands felt like they swallowed up my arm halfway up to my elbow. So there's a certain physical attribute that goes with that. But that's what's most memorable to me about that occasion. There was another opportunity. This was a couple of years after that. We had opportunity to go to Maui for the Hula Bowl, I believe it was, and that was wonderful. But I encountered an individual that our color analyst Bill Curry knew, and he looked very familiar to me. But it's one of those things we get those instances of I can't recall where I've seen him, but he looks familiar. I introduced myself. He introduced himself to me. I said, "What are you here for?" He said, "Our daughter is going to play the harp at the game." "Oh, that's cool. How many kids do you have?" "Well, I have 6 kids." "Where do you live?" "We live in Salt Lake City." "Oh, okay. That's cool." 30 seconds later, that was Ed Smart, his daughter Elizabeth Smart, who had just gotten rescued from the kidnappers and was front page story all over the world. That's who that was. And I felt so embarrassed and ashamed that I didn't recognize him. Bill gave me the most comforting words when he came back. I said, I feel so bad that that was my acquaintance with Ed Smart. And Bill said, you don't know how happy that made him to have anonymity because
Mm,
everybody recognizes him. And he had said to me, Bill said this, Ed Smart said to him, that is so refreshing to be somewhere where you're not put on a pedestal, you're not celebrity. So sometimes our ignorance can indeed be blissful for others.
yeah, wow, what a great story. Two great stories. Yeah, Joe Namath has big hands. I never knew that. I just thought he had great legs because I saw the commercials. So big hands. And yeah, I can imagine, especially because of Ed's fame, the way he got his fame. Nobody wants to get fame that way. And so just to be a regular guy again, I'm sure that did feel really good. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So I'm sure with your professionalism and how great you are at everything you do, there were no mistakes that you ever made.
No, I'm error free. I had a Southwest Conference game and I was on to something, Kim. I think it was TCU and Houston were playing, and it was 49 to 45. This was in the 90s. And I passed a note along that said if one of these teams scores another point, it will become the highest scoring Southwest Conference game in history. And I'm pretty smart with that until I get a piece in my earpiece from the broadcast from the broadcast truck that said, "Well, remember the Houston game last week where they beat SMU 95 to 21?" It's like, oh,
Oops. Glad you didn't announce that, right?
we move on
Yes.
and slink in our chair.
Right, right, exactly, exactly. Yeah, well, I've always wondered how difficult it is, but you obviously have a great memory. But to know all the players and stuff about all the players and the coaches and everything about the coaches and the stats and the numbers and now I kind of know you got to be Kirk. You got to be a guy who numbers are your thing. They just stick with you, and you can just figure it out. And but I don't think everybody can do what you do.
It's a gift. And memory is a gift. It's not always a gift in marriage because we'll have a disagreement with my wife, Cindy. We've been married for 45 years. And I'll bring up something that happened in 1983, and I curse myself. Don't do that. Don't go there. That'll work in the broadcast booth. That doesn't work at home. Short memory here.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Oh my word! And I think probably most marriages have had those moments where you're mad about something. And so it starts out small. And then pretty soon you are saying, and then last week and then remember that time 3 months ago, and remember in 1983 when, and yeah, yeah, it's never a good idea. It's never a good idea.
That's like the profane word of a marriage is always, as in you always or never or you never.
Right, right. Because there's hardly ever an actual truthful always or never. Yeah, they just kind of don't exist. So just don't say them
From
and you'll be
from
happier.
from the perspective of the accused. And
Yeah.
there was somebody who once commented about marriage, and this is for you guys that may be listening out there. It is said, you wake up in the morning, turn to your spouse in bed, and say, "I'm sorry for what I'm going to do today." And that gives you immunization, allegedly.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. Not a bad idea, really. Kind of, yeah, I think that would work. That would be smart. Congratulations on 45 years of marriage. That
Thank
is
you.
a feat. That doesn't occur that often. So congratulations on that. And how is it though, like your schedule? And I imagine you have to travel quite a bit. And so how do you keep things alive when you're gone and she's home or the kids are doing whatever the kids are doing, now they're grown, of course, but how how did that work for you guys?
It's worked splendidly. One, she loves how much I love it, but it also gives her a break and she can actually watch movies for a second time and movies that I wouldn't watch, like You've Got Mail, The Proposal, Sleepless in Seattle, etc. And so I get home from a trip. What did you watch this weekend? Oh, I just love watching La La Land again. Wonderful. I'm glad that you're happy. I'm happy. But the point is, when marriage gets to that stage of maturity, you understand, I think, each other better. And one of the things that has been so helpful to me as a coach is there's so much listening that's involved in that and learning to seek first to understand and then be understood, what Stephen Covey shares in one of his 7 habits. And so it's giving that pause of Cindy will say something and don't immediately respond with but or I got to get my word in edgewise, but rather I hear what you're saying. Tell me more about that. It's worked
Mm,
wonders.
good idea. Great advice. Great advice, everybody. Great advice. I love it. So speaking of advice, you've been gathering bits of advice and advice that you wanted to pass on. So I want you to tell me the why you wrote your book and tell us about it.
When I started my coaching business 9 years ago, had to set up a website, had to be official, had to market myself. Yuck. I don't like selling Thin Mints, but you gotta do it, son. A series of blogs, started developing those. I made a connection here locally with the publisher of a tabloid paper that we have here that comes out monthly. It's for visitors to the area, which we have a lot of those. And so he provided that opportunity with me. So these blogs, I'm doing them once a month. They start to accumulate. And I get to this point of it's kind of a multiple intersection. One, I need to do something with these blogs. Simultaneously, the publisher's saying, Kirk, you ought to write a book. And so I'm kind of like, okay. And then I researched it and I read this statistical piece that 81% of people have a dream of writing a book. Less than 3% actually do. Kim, I've never been top 3% in anything. Here's my opportunity. I can write a book. So those were inspirational factors. So I've got these blogs, they're kind of all over the place because to some degree they're stream of consciousness, things I've observed, things that I have watched from a leadership standpoint, experience from a communication standpoint. How do I blend all these together? So it's like putting a jigsaw puzzle together to some degree. How can I broadly categorize them? And so I went about doing that. It's self-published. I found a wonderful self-publishing group out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Uh, I aligned myself with them because the person who started that business went to University of North Texas, which I did, was a Greek. Her husband was as well. My wife was as well. We're both Christ followers, everything lined up. And I said, I want you to help me with this endeavor. And she did. And we've become friends and connections since then. So the book is about observations, communications, leadership, some sports stories thrown in, some scriptural references of how this can be aligned and applied in everyday life, in the workplace, in whatever your field of endeavor is. And there's 365 pages of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, That's awesome. That is awesome. And it's something that it is quite a wonderful gift for your kids to get all your thoughts and for your grandkids and for their kids someday and their kids someday. And so it's a legacy as well as a book.
It is, and my wife is on me, and I will do it to do an audio version so
Hmm.
that that lives in perpetuity, that that can be listened to, and the voice. Because people I've talked to about this book who know me, they said, I can hear you speaking through these words. So
Hmm.
that's on the to-do list, but it's in print and it's in ebook form right now. Audio when Kirk gets motivated. It's on the to-do list.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, audio I think would be great with your book. There's no doubt about it because it's in your voice because your book is in your voice and then to do it in your voice, you're gonna have your inflections where you meant them to be rather than somebody else reading it and inflecting elsewhere. And sometimes that can change the meaning of something. So I think it'd be really cool for you to do it in your voice. Your wife is very wise, I can tell. Very smart.
Uh, I outkicked my coverage with her. She's out of my league, and somehow she's taken me in, and she's a great gal
Yeah, that's good. So she's wise and kind and compassionate, apparently.
and and incredibly creative. Interior design. What I really admire about her, well, many things, but one in particular, which really has manifested itself more recently as her business has grown, is her eye. How do you see things as they are and transfer that to what they can be and put that into a vision? It's incredible what she does, and she's gotten national awards and has been recognized for that. But of course, she was magna cum laude in college. I was not. So it continues.
Continues. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, good for her. That is a gift. I mean, it's certainly a lot of years of training and learning, but also I think there is something just sort of inborn when you're able to do that, when you're able to really see that. I think that's a hard thing to teach. I think it's something that's just in you.
She has a talent for that. And she has a regret that she didn't study art in college. She switched majors. And there were a couple of people she went to high school with who have become quite accomplished at art. And she felt she was in that category. I should have pursued that. And we think about regrets, and sometimes God rewires our trip just a little bit so we come back to where we were going to be originally, but we get seasoned in getting to that place. As a coach, I didn't start my business till I was 60, for example, and I love it. Do I regret that I didn't start it earlier? No, I wasn't ready for it yet. I needed to experience some other things first, some good things and some not so good things, so that I had a better perspective to work with people on.
You know, it's interesting that you said some good things and some not so good things because I think to really be a good coach, you have to go through some hard times. You have to experience some crap along the way and gotten through it because then you can relate to people. People can relate to you in a whole different way, and you can relate to them in a whole different way, and have a deeper understanding of humanity in general.
And I know you've been through your hardships and your difficulties, Kim, and I appreciate your resilience with that. One of the things for me, this was about 30 years ago, and it has been so helpful in my coaching practice. I was experiencing clinical depression at that time and had low self-esteem, uh, played that evil game of comparing myself to others. They're doing better than me, particularly financially. I'm struggling. I feel the pressure at home because I'm struggling, and I sunk pretty low. I was in a men's group at the time, and one of our members who's a pastor said, I'm going to hook you up with this guy. And I've worked with him before, and I think what you're going to find is he's going to say something to you that really matters. And my friend said, and I'll pay for it. Oh, what's there to lose here? I met with him and we were talking about where I was. And I said, I feel like I'm in a wilderness right now and just lost and surrounded by these trees and it's dark. And I'm really reaching out to God and trying to hold on to what He may be trying to communicate with me at this time. And the guy said to me, then God has got you exactly where He wants you.
Mhm.
Now, I'd like to say immediately life changed for the better. It didn't. But over these 30 years since that point in time, I've gone back to that so often when I get down about myself or doubting or playing the imposter syndrome. And I'm reaching out to God knowing He's got me right where He wants me with Him.
Yeah, wow. That is good. Those are good words. Those are good words. Because it can be so easy to get way too wrapped up in your head and thinking way too much about tomorrow, thinking way too much about yesterday, and then you're missing today. And you know, things can change in a day, things can change. Things can change in a month, in a year. And so where you are today, if it's not a great place, hang in there because things can get better. You don't have to stay in the down, right?
God knows what He's doing, and those down times are equipping us for something else that's going to come down the road. And we don't know immediately, but it will reveal itself more likely than not and be something greater than we could have ever expected. And I've been the benefactor of that, I would say, many times over.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Those are the times of greatest learning for sure. So I'm curious, as you're writing this blog for the, local paper that you have going, is there one that sticks out, like got more reaction from people than others?
Well, there's the recency syndrome. And so I'm just going to share with that. I don't know the reaction it's gotten, but it was cathartic for me. I ride my bike a lot. I'm a cyclist, and I'm intrigued by these across a state rides. I've done Iowa 10 times. I've now done Georgia 7 times because that's closer to us. So this past year, we did the hills and mountains of northern Georgia. And we came to this spot called Toccoa Falls, which is a beautiful place. And there's a college that sits there. And it was worth the detour, even though, of course, there was a hill to climb to get back away from that. But I did a little bit more research about Toccoa Falls and learned the history after an event that took place on 4th of July. And that would have been in Kerrville, Texas. And we all know what happened there now with the floods and the number of people that have been impacted in Central Texas and these poor kids that have lost their lives and gone through that hardship. It was in 1987 that I got a phone call and was told, I was living in Kerrville, Texas at the time, had been appointed the public information officer by the fire chief and was told at the time, pre-cell phones, we've got a situation here. We need you to come and handle the media. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's the situation? It was a little bit downstream from Kerrville, but there had been a summer camp that was a church camp that this literal wall of water had come up due to torrential rains. This was in 1987. And if you've never seen a wall of water, which I had the opportunity to see then, it is like a land-based typhoon is the best way to describe it, tsunami. And the water just literally comes up. July 4th this past year, there was a 26-foot rise in the matter of just 45 minutes. It's incredible what happens. So in this instance in 1987, There were kids from a church camp who were trying to cross the river to get away. Their bus was caught by this wall of water. A few kids made it out to the other side. Many were swept down the river. The job of our agency was to perform a rescue operation. And it's incredible what first responders did then and do now that risk their lives going into rafts as part of a swiftwater rescue team to go and render aid. And they rescued, I think, 29 kids at that point. 10 unfortunately perished. But what I remember about that time is organized chaos, the number of people that came forward, and an unmistakable smell to the water, which was dead fish. It was almost formaldehyde-ish to some degree. So when July 4th of this year came around and that happened, there was a degree of PTS that came back in responding 38 years before to that situation. I knew some of the people who perished, Jane Ragsdale, the camp director at Heart of the Hills, Dick Eastland, who was at Camp Mystic, the head there. These are people that have devoted their lives to enjoyment and fun for young kids, not to mention the young kids. I knew the mayor, or I know the mayor. He was mayor when I was there. He's mayor again. So a lot of this was surreal again for me. And how I track that back to Toccoa Falls in 1977, there had been a flood there. Again, a lot of people perished, a lot of buildings destroyed, and it created our first really awareness under the Jimmy Carter administration of the need to inspect dams to make sure that things are safe. But even with that, there are still those perils that exist out there, unfortunately. And the whole point of the blog is we need to be aware of and respect our nature and do what we can to keep it enjoyable and keep it in a state where it can continue to be enjoyed. And that can get into a lot of different things like climate change and things like that. But this was a storm that was big and unexpected on July 4th, and it really resonated with me. I know that's a long story about a
Oh,
blog.
yeah, that is tough. I can see where PTS would come back to you because it's one thing to read about, it's one thing to see pictures on the news. It's a whole nother story when you are there and you are smelling and seeing and tasting and feeling, and you're surrounded by what's going on instead of just watching it on a flat screen. It's so different to be there in person, and it does impact you. I mean, my word. So when going through that, when there's another thing like that, I would imagine every time, anytime there's going to be another thing like that, you're going to go back to that day, back to that moment when you were right in the thick of it. So, yeah.
And Kim, I was 30 years old at the time. I will admit I didn't know what I was doing as a public information officer, but all of a sudden news media from Austin and San Antonio are there, not to mention the Associated Press, CNN, were all converging there. And I was acting in a director's position of they had helicopters. Can you help us out by going upstream to see what you can find up there? So just going through all the mechanics of that particular day, July 17th, 1987, came back and was reality once again.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, such tragedy. Well, and it's hard to imagine without ever seeing it. Water rising, did you say 26 feet in 45 minutes?
In 45 minutes. That's almost a foot a minute. It's incredible. And, there's several inches of rain, not feet. And I never really understood how can there be flooding when you're only getting 4, 6, 8 inches of rain. Well, it's like a sieve. You take a piece of paper, you fold it in the middle, it's all running to that point in the middle. It's coming off of these limestone outcroppings, It's not penetrating into the soil because it's a clay soil where it's not limestone. So all those factors contribute to the water's not being absorbed. It's just filling up.
And the fact is water wins. Water
Water is
water is
powerful.
Yeah, water is powerful. There's no doubt about it. Water is so powerful. Yeah, so tell me about a typical day for you now. You're coaching, you are an author, a world-renowned author. I'm going to just throw it out there, world-renowned author. And so what do your days look like?
Every day is a little bit different. Um, I'll take a Monday, for instance. I've got a 6 a.m. spin class, and the same thing on Wednesday. So I'll go yell at people and get paid for it and get a workout in and introduce them to some music that they've never heard before and probably never want to hear again. But there'll be a little bit of a history lesson that goes with that because I'm history now. On President's Day, we'll take them through a drill of naming all 47 presidents, which they don't do so well at. But I had a guy from Ontario who was a principal at a school there, and he did quite well at American presidents. So my hat's off to the Canadians. So um, it'll be leading a class, come back, have lunch, breakfast, check email, give proposals to prospective clients that may be out there that I've gotten through a variety of different resources. The best days, I'll have maybe two, three, four client appointments to work through. Maybe I'll have to follow up on something with ESPN. Yesterday, making travel arrangements for games that are going to come in September. So, getting that set up. I am a small group leader in St. Louis. And that's an interesting story in and of itself. But I've got a small group I lead at the church we attended while we were there and do a little bit of preparation for facilitating that group. Uh, we'll get to about, I'll cook dinner 2 or 3 nights a week. We alternate on that. Do the dishes when I'm not cooking, come back up here, finish up some work. I send something out to my son, daughter, and their significant others every day. It may be just an inspiration that's come across. Maybe it's a riddle. Maybe it's a piece of scripture. That's my way of saying I'm thinking of you. Maybe this will spur some conversation with your spouse. I hope so. Then it's down to bed. Wife, what are we going to watch tonight that's not The Proposal, that's not Sleepless in Seattle, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll compromise on something with that and say our evening prayers, go to bed. That's what a typical and a desired day goes like for me. Some days write a blog and think about, okay, the next book that's going to come out, version two. I've been tasked with doing some leadership facilitation. So I'm going to go to Maryland next month and do that for an organization. I absolutely love working with groups, coaching and leadership development. It's so much fun.
Yeah, well, it's so nice that you're taking all of the things that you've learned, all the wisdom you've gained over the years, and passing it on. I often think people retire, whatever that word means, I guess, but it can have such a negative connotation. Like when you're working and well, what do you do? I'm CEO of this company, or I'm, whatever. And people, oh, you are intrigued and want to hear more. But if you say I'm retired, they're like, oh, and they walk away. And yet, those are the wisest people. They've lived the longest and they've got the most to share and the most to contribute, the most to give, and can be a little discarded. And it's like, that's stuff we should be tapping into.
I call it I'm refired. I draw retirement income and draw a little bit of Social Security here and there and have Medicare and all those accoutrements that go with having lasted as long as I've lasted. But I don't have any desire to go into this thing called retirement. For one thing, what am I going to do? Um, every day is a holiday for me because I'm enjoying what it is that I have the opportunity to do. And another thing that's kind of come with that is there's a word I've worked really hard to take out of my vocabulary, and that's the word busy. I have substituted engaged with that because people that I encounter, I want them to know I'm accessible and I've got time for you. And it may be that the intersection we're having at that moment could be the most important one to me, or more importantly, the person I'm engaging with. So engaging has substituted for busy. Sometimes that slips out every now and then, but I'm working on it.
I like that. That's great advice. I'm going to take that one on. I'm engaged. I'm I'm not busy, I'm engaged. I like that. I like that a lot. Speaking of advice, you've been known to deliver some advice, so I'd like to hear it. What's some of the uh, first I'd like to hear what's some of the best advice you've ever received, and then I'd like to hear some of the best advice you can give.
It was after a football game in San Francisco. Um, and our son, who's 34 now, he was an adolescent at the time, and going through a lot of the challenges of teendom. And we were on that journey of watching his challenges and experience the wrath of them to some degree as well. So, Bill Curry, who was our color analyst, I think I mentioned his name already, I'd shared with him about some of what we were experiencing. And with a pause, with a hesitation, he said to me, Kirk, I've got good news and I've got bad news for you. What's the good news? Kyle, that's my son, is going to come around, highly likely, to the way that he was raised. That's the good news. The bad news, I don't know when that's going to happen. But it was a commentary about patience and about the structure of a family trying to do things the right way and being an example to their children. And Bill is right. Kyle certainly has his stumbles still, as we all do, but it is so refreshing and rewarding to me when he talks about the McCarley legacy, things that he wants to do that he saw me do or that he heard me talk about my dad doing. And that was very reassuring. So, good advice in that regard. This was before that when I first entered the workforce. And it was a person who said to me, change jobs about every 5 to 7 years. And I said, why? Because you get enough experience to get some stability and learn something, but you also don't get ingrained into one particular culture. You have the flexibility to go and apply what you've learned, but also to reinvent yourself each time you did that. It's funny how that worked out for me because I didn't intentionally do it, but I had 5 jobs in my professional career and they spanned 37 years. That comes out to 7.4 years per job. Funny how that works.
No kidding. No kidding. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know that I've heard that before, but it seems to be these days it's different than it was like especially when I was a kid and people just stayed in the same job until they retired. And
Yeah.
and yeah, yeah. So yeah,
And it's even
yeah.
it's either it's even narrower now. I was in a LinkedIn conversation a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's 3 to 5 years now. Some would argue it's maybe 2 to 3. So that loyalty has diminished and the portability has certainly increased.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting. Okay, so now I'm ready for you to drop some gold on us, some of your best advice.
My word for this year, 2025, is move. That's my 4 letter word, MOVE. It sounds pretty simple, but for some people, it's difficult. People that are burdened may have a difficult time just getting out of bed in the morning. So, small steps, get out of bed today. Go back into bed if you need to, but you've accomplished one thing. Start to make your bed. Admiral McRaney, I believe it is, the Navy Admiral, wrote a book about that. Make your bed every day because that's one thing to check off your to-do list. Brush your teeth, splash some water in your face, shower, do some dishes, unload the dishwasher, check your incoming mail. What is happening with that movement? The motion is creating a synergy. You're gaining momentum with those simple tasks that are going to lead to inspiration and motivation for the more complex task. So the ability to move is so important. And I've seen that because most of my blogs are written while I'm cycling. I'm not writing them down or putting into notes or anything, but I'm coming up with concepts, which I know what they are. I just need to make a mental note of them. That becomes a blog, and it happens so often when I'm in motion. So that would be my first word, my first comment of advice, move. Second goes back to what I'd said earlier. Seek first to understand. How do you do that effectively? In America, the average time between someone saying something and the other person commenting back is like a second. If you're in the Northeast, it's like half a second. They talk quicker. Down in the South, maybe a little bit slower where I am. But the point of that is we get anxious. I want to say what I'm thinking. And Kim, I've misheard or not even heard at all what it is that you want to share. So pause, hesitate. Asian cultures, it can be as long as 6 to 8 seconds. And we get uncomfortable with that because there's silence. No, there's time for processing. And it's so interesting with clients that at the end of a meeting, they'll say, thank you for allowing me time to think, to consider what it is that I want to think about. Nobody gives me that, and I appreciate it. So,
Wow.
pausing.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. That goes along with I dedicated this year, a year to figuring out the true meaning of love. And I used a 2,000-year-old poem, Love is patient, love is kind, etc. And that goes right along with love is patient. Because what I discovered about love that is patient is you recognize this is the most important moment of your life. You're not thinking about the past, you're not thinking about the future, but this moment right here, right now. And to show love in the moment, love that is patient in the moment, you're fully there, you're fully engaged, and you listen to every word instead of formulating what it is you're going to say next, or the comment that you have to make about that, or whatever, but you are listening before you respond. And I love the idea of listening and then taking a second, taking a couple seconds, taking however long to come back with a response instead of the immediate. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's great advice. I think that we should change America. And you said we're 1 second responders. We need to start a movement and become 3 second responders or whatever it happens to be. But that's great advice. Great advice. So we are at the end of our time together, unfortunately. Is there, I want you to talk about where people can get your book and how people can connect with you, but I'd also like to know, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we're finished?
The book, Thoughts from My Kids and Other People's Kids, is available on Amazon. You can get it at your local bookstore and order via that as well. And as I said earlier, working on an audio version one of these days, kids. So I need to coach myself on that. I'm in Northwest Florida. Santa Rosa Beach is the community we live in. It's between Destin and Panama City Beach. I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I can be contacted via email. My website is theseedsowercoach.com and kirkmccarleyauthor.com. kirkandkim.com is my landing page for those that would like to order a copy of that book.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So yes, so buy the book, get on there. Of course, everything will be in the show notes, but get on the website, order the book. You will be happy that you did. You'll want to give it to other people. So buy a few copies and give them away because it's a great book. You really did a great job with it, Kirk. I'm very impressed. Thank you for writing that book.
Well, thank you for your kind remarks, Kim. I appreciate that more than you know.
Yeah, well, and thank you so much for everything. Thank you for being here today and sharing stories and sharing wisdom. I appreciate it all. I'm sure everybody who's listened to it appreciates it all as well. And so thank you. Thank you again for that. I appreciate it. And for everybody out there, I just want to say that until we see each other again, I pray that you walk with an open heart and you live your love loud.